Chris Matthews announces his retirement from MSNBC. MSNBC's Chris Matthews abruptly announced his retirement at the top of his program on Monday night after a tumultuous month that included calls for his firing. I'm retiring. This is the last hardball on MSNBC, and obviously it's not for blah, blah, blah. So Matthews was notably absent from the network's live coverage of the South Carolina primary on Saturday. Now, you know the best part? He left after his opening segment. Like, he gave his opening segment, and then he was done. He didn't do that. He announced his retirement, and then it was just over, and he didn't do the rest of the episode, which was so bizarre. That's like, hey, do you guys remember that awesome sporting event, that awesome football game where the quarterback announced his retirement? He was like, this is it for me. This is how I go out. This is it. One more time, baby. And then he was like, all right, have a good game, and sat on the bench. He just sat. He was like, have fun. They're like, don't you want to do another? And he's like, nope, retired. Didn't you hear me? You guys have fun. I might look at a playbook. I don't know. I'm retired though. Who does that? Who doesn't go through? Hey, do you guys remember? I actually saw Bob Seger earlier this year, and it was Bob Seger's retirement tour. And he announced, he's like, this is it for me. I'm retiring. Then he didn't play any music. He just left. Except that didn't happen. He actually played an amazing set, and it was awesome. I was really hoping he was going to play 9 tonight, and he didn't. And that was a little sad. But it was still an amazing show. And he stuck to the set list, which my dad showed me ahead of time. Why did he? Side note, I don't understand why people like that in live music. Why do you? I mean, I will occasionally look at a set list if I'm on the fence about going to a show. If I'm like, I don't know if I want to go to this one, I'll be like, well, what are they doing? You know, what are they pushing in the catalog? And then if I really don't like the set list, I won't go. If I really do like the set list, I will go. Otherwise, I don't want to see the set list. I want to be surprised. But, when I went to see Bob Seger, I went with my family. I was in Pittsburgh for my sister's wedding, actually. And I came in a couple of days early so we could all go to a Bob Seger show like you do. And, I was like, man, I really hope he plays 9 tonight. And my dad was like, well, sorry, and just shoves the set list in. I was like, I didn't want to. All right. But anyway, some people, they love that. Sometimes they don't. I'm a little bit of both, but I lean towards, I don't want to see the set list. Most of the time, like a Bob Seger show, I'm not on the fence about going. I want to go. I've never seen him before. This is the last chance. I don't need to see the set list. But anyway, so, yeah, it's so weird that he didn't do his last show. He just announced he was leaving and then didn't do. All right, so let's watch the video. Here he goes. Here's Chris Matthews retiring. And you know what? I'll tell you guys something. I already watched this. And we're going to have a moment, and you guys are going to be a little surprised. But first, let's watch the video.
Let me start with my headline tonight. I'm retiring. This is the last hardball on MSNBC. And obviously, this isn't for lack of interest in politics. As you can tell, I've loved every minute of my 20 years as host of Hardball. Every morning I read the papers, and I'm gung-ho to get to work. Not many people have had this privilege. I love working with my producers and the discussions we have over how to report the news. And I love having this connection with you, the good people who watch. I've learned who you are, bumping into you on the sidewalk or waiting at an airport and saying hello. You're like me. I hear it from your kids and grandchildren who say, my dad loves you, or my grandmother loves you, or my husband watched it till the end. Well, after conversation with MSNBC, I decided tonight will be my last hardball. So let me tell you why. The younger generations out there are ready to take the reins. We see them in politics, in the media, in fighting for their causes. They are improving the workplace. We're talking here about better standards than we grew up with, fair standards. A lot of it has to do with how we talk to each other. Compliments on a woman's appearance that some men, including me, might have once incorrectly thought were okay. We're never okay. Not then and certainly not today. And for making such comments in the past, I'm sorry. I'm very proud of the work I've done here. Long before I went on television, I worked for years in politics, was a newspaper columnist, an author. I'm working on another book. I'll continue to write and talk about politics and cheer on my producers and crew here in Washington and New York and my MSNBC colleagues. They will continue to produce great journalism in the years ahead. And for those of you who have gotten into the habit of watching Hardball every night, I hope you're going to miss me because I'm going to miss you. But remembering Humphrey Bogart and Casablanca, we'll always have Hardball. So let's not say goodbye, but till we meet again.
So there you have it. And then he didn't do the rest of the episode, which I find that incredibly funny. But Chris Matthews, first of all, look, Chris, and we can go through the footage of him being creepy to women in, live on the air. And apparently he was off air too. We don't need to play all that. But Chris, let's not do the, sir, saying things about a woman's appearance is just not okay. And I didn't realize, and I'm sorry. And then this, look, no, Chris, you're missing the point here. There's nothing wrong with complimenting a woman's appearance in an appropriate way. Of course. I mean, it depends. Like, hey, I really like what you did with your hair or something like that. There's nothing wrong with that. There has never been anything wrong with that. There never will be. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's in the context, Chris. And what you would do is you would do stuff on air where you're like, and they look marvelous. And man, I got to say. And then what you're doing in that moment, Chris, is you're reducing it to only being about a woman's appearance and not about their ideas or what they bring to the table as a journalist or a politician or whatever else it may be. And you still don't get that, Chris. You still don't get that. Because you're a disconnected old white guy and you don't understand the fact that a woman is subjected to that type of stuff all the time. A woman, more so than a man in society, way more so than a man, is reduced to it all being about her looks constantly, all the time. That's something women deal with, Chris. That's something you and I can't imagine. We have no idea what that feels like. We just don't. That's the reality. So when you're on air, in a format on air, and you make these bordering on crude remarks about a woman's appearance, yeah, that's a really lame thing to do, Chris. It's really lame and it's weak. And you're not just being complimentary. You're not just complimenting someone. No, you're reducing that person. And you're so tone deaf, you don't realize that that's what you're doing. There's a big difference. If all you had ever done over the years, Chris, is like when you see a female colleague and you say something to her off air or even on air in inappropriate context where you're like, hey, I really like your new hairstyle looks great. Looks great on you. I really like it. Something like that. And again, preferably off air, because when you say it off air, you're not making it out like this is what this person brings to the table. You're just making a nice compliment. And again, Chris, you don't see the difference there because you're a disconnected old white guy. But you know what? I'll give Chris Matthews credit here. One thing I can say for Chris Matthews that I can't say for a lot of other people. Chris Matthews at least knew. Now, the reason he knew is because people have been calling for his resignation and because he's been sounding like an unhinged psychopath. So this isn't necessarily a compliment, nor should it be. But I will say that at least Chris Matthews knew it was time for him to get out of the way. He saw it. He's a disconnected guy, but he at least has some vision. And he saw where the momentum was shifting. And he saw that it's time for people like him to move out of the way. And this has nothing to do with age, by the way. This has nothing to do with age. Bernie Sanders is older than Chris Matthews. So this has nothing to do with age. But Chris Matthews knew it's time for the old guard like me, somebody who's going to make these ridiculously offensive comparisons about Bernie Sanders, likening his movement to Nazi Germany when Bernie Sanders himself had family who died in the Holocaust. And by the way, in Chris Matthews' apology, he didn't even mention that part, which makes his apology null and void. It was a bullshit apology. And his send-off was, for the most part, a BS send-off, too. You're like me. Could that have sounded any more scripted? But so Chris Matthews, good riddance. You will not be missed. But at least you had the foresight to realize it's time for me to get out of the way. And what I'd really love to see is I'd love it if you send an email to Chuck Todd, to Rachel Maddow, to pretty much all of your colleagues, and to your network, and to Comcast, and tell them they should follow your lead, because it's time for them to get out of the way too. It's time for cable news to get out of the way, because it's not news at all. It's establishment approved PR. It's Comcast approved public relations. It's Time Warner approved public relations. It's Rupert Murdoch approved public relations. So it's nice that Chris Matthews realized it was time for him to get out of the way, but he is just one factor in a huge disease that is our corporate media. He's one symptom in that huge disease. And they're likely going to replace him with another symptom. That's probably what's going to happen. Another symptom will come and replace him. So good riddance, Chris Matthews. Good riddance. And it's pretty funny you didn't even finish the episode. So, I'm retiring, and yeah. Like, effective immediately, I'm out. I'm out. Peace.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make it our own. Get your